Hello, people of Earth. Yes, I'm from Earth too, but not over the past 2,000 years, I haven't. But listen up. I have something to tell you, even though you must already know this is a video. This, nonetheless, has been made possible through an honorable man of God so that you can hear me say what needs to be said to everyone on the entire planet, as your time here is almost up. One thing I can really appreciate about all of you is about all of your church songs and all of your praises. But I have to tell you that I have never been an exhibitionist. I was never any kind of show-off. What I did do was to prove my Father's love for you guys. I presented His power and His love and His compassion. I was never any kind of magician that could levitate in front of anybody or change water into wine or feed 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and a few fish. My having done anything that no one could ever do again would have been against my Father's will. You have to remember that I told you guys more than once that you could do whatever I did and you could do everything that I did because I had to leave the planet. Yes, I had to leave the planet. And you know why? It's because I was given the responsibility to prepare a place for you when you get here. Well, brethren, I have good news. I'm almost done. Preparing a place for you, that is. That's when everybody will be coming home to experience living in a wonderful land where everybody will have their own dream homes and in a dream kingdom of all wonderful people. That's when everybody will have their own mansions. And you know what? You're going to need them for your entire families. You have no idea how vast your family lineage really is. And believe me, you're going to have your hands full when you get here. However, my point here is that if I ever did anything like what your preachers are preaching about me, as if I was some type of magician who could break the laws of physics, if I personally had broken any laws of physics, I would have been from then on never been able to save anyone from damnation. If I did anything in the form of magically doing any crazy thing like walking on water, which is actually to levitate above it, I would have lost my inheritance. Now let's talk about the marriage celebration. You know, the one where I changed water into wine? I changed water into a beverage using what I had come prepared with to the ceremony. It was their tradition for that type of ceremony. No alcohol was ever allowed at any service like that back then. And by the way, that was the sweetest grape concentrate they ever tasted. And if you don't mind me saying, it took months to prepare. If I had magically changed their water into an alcoholic beverage, oh boy, that would have been it. I would have lost my inheritance. If I ever pulled any stunt that appeared to be magically involved with doing some kind of crazy thing that no one else has ever been able to do, my sonship status would have been instantly revoked. I would have died just like you guys die, but I wouldn't have been able to get back up. But I did get back up, which allowed me to pay the ultimate sacrifice for you guys, and that was only made possible because I never went against my Father's will. And thankfully, my Father kept all His promises too. And then for preachers to speak of my magically feeding 5,000 people, or magically walking on top of a water line, or of magically turning water into some type of sweet alcoholic beverage, no. That would have not been allowed. Those are three of the things that if I use some type of magical powers to do anything that no one else could ever do, my inheritance and qualifications would have been stripped from me just like they were stripped from Adam and Eve thousands of years before my time. Now let's talk about what would have been the craziest and most aggressive disobedience that my father would have definitely not wanted me to do. Preachers are calling it walking on top of water, as though I could somehow manipulate some gravitational electromagnetic forces to keep my clothes dry. Yeah, ridiculous. No kidding. Okay, but let's go back. There I was, after returning from my session of prayer with my father. I was coming from my distant little hidden sanctuary only a few kilometers away. This was after I sent the people home, whom I helped to get them to share their own provisions of foodstuffs with each other. You guys have been calling it feeding the 5,000 with only a few fish and loaves of bread. Now picture this. As I was sending them away, I told the disciples that it would be best for them to get to the next meeting place by boat. Why? It's because there were so many people walking in the same direction that my disciples had to walk in that direction to get to the next meeting place. I believed at that time that there were so many blessed people walking in the same direction that my disciples might have easily became sidetracked. I wanted them to avoid the crowds because if they didn't, they most likely would have not made it to our next meeting place. And now how was I supposed to know that the winds would pick up so strongly, blowing them in the opposite direction? I just never considered it at the time. You think I'm supposed to know everything, like my father? Well, I'm not my father. I'm the son of my father. But you know what that also makes me? It makes me 100% totally human. I never knew back then, and I still don't know everything 2,000 years later. And to be totally honest, I didn't think I needed to ask my father about every little thing. Therefore, that was just one of the few things I simply was not aware of. That was, of course, just about the darn wind at the moment. Although sometimes you can tell when it's going to get windy, while other times no one can tell. Wind just happens. And that's the way it was back then. And now I am so envious that you people are so spoiled with your weatherman channels and all that stuff that you have on your internet. But that's beside the point. Getting back, however, there it was. Evening had fallen and the winds had picked up. I just got back and I was about to take a little shortcut to go over to Gennesaret when I saw those guys having such a hard time out there. From the looks of how they were struggling, it was going to take them at least another 2 or 3 hours, and I wasn't even sure if they were going to make it to begin with. I actually thought they may not even make it at all. Now the winds looked pretty strong on the lake, and the chances of those guys being blown all the way back across the lake, much further away than where they started, was terribly high in my estimation. Now that would have been a calamity. Then can you imagine me waiting at Gennesaret while the men were miles away on the other side of the lake? No, that would not have been good. Especially since I gave them my word that it would be better for them that they should go by boat. And I gave them my word that I would be there. But if the winds blew too hard, they might have given up. And so I realized that I had no choice. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy because they were really far out there. I was tempted to levitate out there, but I knew better than that. I had to think fast. Wrapping my tunic around my waist as tight as possible, I got in that water as fast as I could. And while I swam out there, I had to keep a good eye on them so that if the winds did blow them back, I would at least be able to intersect them in the direction where the winds would have blown them back to. And let me tell you, I was no Olympic swimmer. I knew I could swim all the way out there, but I knew it was going to be very challenging, to say the least. If I would have asked my father to save me from getting wet or to keep me from such a tremendous struggle that I went through, That would have been no different than to ask my father to save me from having to climb down a hill. You know, that time when I went up to the altar when the devil tempted me to float down, being carried by angels, as the devil put it, as if I should try to convince everybody who I was and the power that I had? Ugh, no way. That would have been out of the question. And so would levitating on top of a water line. And I've got to tell you that such a maneuver would have been tempting, but if I had tempted my father even one time, that would have been it for me. I would have never been able to get up from the dead. So what else was I supposed to do? If I could walk on top of water, I might as well fly over there, and in order to do that, I would have had to ask angels to carry me. This would have appeared to the disciples to have been levitation, and in the eyes of the disciples, there's no way they would understand that. All they knew was their own bodily physics, and it was of the simplest of physics at that. That's all the people knew back then, and that was not a time for magic. I was certainly not allowed to perform any magic for anyone, and that included breaking the laws of physics. Well, at least before my death and resurrection anyway. And besides, if the disciples had seen me levitate anywhere, and especially over the water in those conditions, it would have scared the crap out of those guys. And they would have been talking about it to everyone forever. But there's not a single word written about them talking about it thereafter. If I would have walked over there on that windy, wavy liquid surface, it would have been no different than flying at just a little lower altitude. Do you think people just levitate on a normal basis? Of course you don't. Would I have told anybody that they could do whatever I did when no one's ever been able to walk on water, not before nor after? If I did walk on water and then told everybody that they could do whatever I did, that would have been a lie, and that would have cost me. But you know that it wasn't a lie because I got up from the dead, and I'm still alive 2,000 years later. But here I am on this wonderful kingdom planet, and by now you're probably wondering why I had to leave Earth so soon. I had to leave 2,000 years ago because my father told me that I had some very important things that I had to get done on another planet, and that would take me a lot of work and a lot of time. My father wanted me to get on it as soon as possible because he told me that there's no time to lose. And he was right. It's a big job, and I still have a lot of mansions to build. The thing is that while I was on the earth, any demonstration of an act of levitation in any respect would have made people fearful of my presence. They wouldn't have become any less fearful, and probably would have become more fearful than their fear of the tyrannical dictators that were ruling over Rome at the time. Oh yeah, they were afraid of the Romans. But if I did anything so crazy as to levitate across a vast body of water, those people would have become even more afraid of me. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And it would have only taken one to become afraid of me to have done a terrible disservice to my father. Many of them would have worshipped me when, in fact, they wouldn't have done it out of appreciation. They would have done it out of fear. Fear that if they didn't, they might think I'd do them some type of injustice or even kill them. And that's not what my ministry was all about, my friends. I would certainly appreciate if someone would start telling people about the truth of my little excursion through the water, which of course was to get to the struggling men before they had lost their way. Now, I have to let you know that it's been very frustrating for me every time I hear another Walking on Water episode that I must have done. Please believe me when I tell you that this has been a pet peeve of mine for hundreds of years. It just happens to be a direct accusation that I went against my father's will to be some type of exhibitionist, if not something just to keep my hair clean and clothes dry. Sheesh, oy vey. By now, you're probably catching on. I always had to do my father's will, and levitation was not something that my father wanted me to do in front of those people. So now that you've got that down, I've got to tell you about one other thing that your religious leaders have convoluted of my presence of some 2,000 years ago. That just happens to be about my feeding the 5,000 people amidst their children. This is something that just about anybody can do as long as they have a little bit of authority. Even Caesar could have done this, but Caesar wouldn't have blessed their hearts like my father did. I simply gathered those thousands of people into smaller groups, and holy cow, there were a lot of them. I tried to keep the groups around 50 people with all their children, and that was around 100 groups. Can you imagine all those people sitting around quietly waiting for a blessing? That's why they all followed me over there. They wanted a blessing from my father. I made sure that there were plenty of children in every group when I attempted to get the mothers and the fathers to repeat what I was trying to administer to them. That just happened to be to share out of their abundance. It just happens to be called the abundant sharing principle, if you didn't already know. Since I already knew that the children don't eat very much, I simply helped the parents to share some of their provisions that they took along for themselves and for their children. Everybody knows that no one goes on a long trip with their children without taking provisions for them. Now, of course, there's always going to be scragglers tagging along who just want some kind of a handout, and there were 12 baskets full of leftovers for them. Now, that was pretty cool. I really thought that was awesome. Every single person cooperated. There were no arguments and there was no fighting. To me, it was amazing. Everybody shared and everybody was blessed. My disciples even told me that while they were redistributing the leftover food, they saw grown men crying with tears of joy. In opposition to Earth's now common religious consensus, there's nothing magical about that. The real miracle wasn't just that they got food that day and that every person participated without any remorse. The real miracle is that they were blessed even more because on their way back to their homes, they met up with others that blessed their lives with relationships, and within great fellowship, they recognized that it was my Father who provided the miracles in their hearts. That's where real miracles happen. They're not necessarily some type of physiological phenomenon, people. Real miracles happen in the minds and in the hearts of people who recognize God's love. Do you actually think that I personally raised anybody from the dead? Do you actually think I personally healed the sick and got the blind to see the light of day again? Do you think that I was personally the one who healed the crippled so that they could suddenly walk again? No, my friends and brethren, it was my Father who has that power, not me. While I was on the earth, before I paid the price for your salvation, I not only always did my Father's will, I never strayed from it, not even once. I always worked in a way that led people to the appreciation of the unconditional love that my Father has for you. I would have never levitated in front of anybody, and especially over such a vast body of water when the only sensible thing to do was to swim out there. Neither did I ever fly over anyone to try to convince them of my stature. That's what Satan wanted me to do. That would have been a spectacular act of breaking the laws of physics, and that alone would have been completely against my Father's will. Why? It's because it would have freaked people out and made them confused for thousands of years. Okay, so maybe Satan was able to fool some people, but not you anymore. It's my Father who heals people, and it continues to be my Father who melts people's hearts, but only when they're ready. But sadly, some people wait too long. And yes, I know a lot of people suffer. I know also that a lot of people die before they get a chance to hear who I am and what I've done. Those people and their children will get a second chance in the next realm. My Father is not spiritually unethical. This is a truth you need to understand. My Father has to be fair within all realms, and that includes the physical realm and the spiritual realm. As for the evil humans, however, they will have to wait it out for about 1,000 years in a place I would call tormentuous. Now, they're not going to like it, but it's what they choose. And I personally don't have any say in what that choice might be. Again, I would implore you to not fear for their lives, because they will get a second chance too. But it's not for you to know when or how. It's just for you to know that it's in the future. Do you think that I personally know when that time will be? Sorry, but even I have no idea. But I trust my Father that He will accomplish it for humanity in His own way and in His own time. Now the big question is, when will I return to Earth? The answer is simply that I don't know that either. Might I arrive in the air with thousands of leagues of angels to carry you all away while my Father raises the dead so that everyone can meet all at the same time up in the clouds in what may appear to be flying saucers? Well, that's a possibility. But it's just one of many possibilities how you will be transported from a God-forsaken earth to a place where there is no death, to a place where there is no suffering, to a place where there is not a single tear of anguish. That's where I am now, and that's where I have been for the past 2,000 years. And now I've got some news for you. I'm the youngest one here, but there's even better news. They're all waiting for you, and they all love you before you even get here. That's why you need my help when you get here. While on earth you are my brethren, but when you get here, you'll be my much younger siblings. Do you think that might be okay? Of course it will. I'll be guiding you through all the apparent craziness that many of you will definitely find very intimidating if it wasn't for my love and my ability to persuade my peers and my elders within this new place to love you as I love you. But don't worry about that right now. You have your lives to live, and I would hope that you would no longer accuse me of such obviously sinful activities as magically levitating over some crazy body of water, or that I attempted to disgrace Peter for not levitating as well when I never levitated to begin with. I swam instead. That's right, people. It's not hard to understand. I swam instead.